Welcome to another Pretalk today with Olga Khryapchenkova. Welcome, Olga.
Thanks for having me here. So happy.
Well, thank you for being here. And please introduce yourself and let me check if I pronounce your last name correctly.
My name is Olga Khryapchenkova, but you can pronounce it in very many different
Excellent.
ways. And I'm the product manager of NOMI, the AI voice assistant of NIO in Europe. So I work together with the different stakeholders, mostly with the developers teams in both Europe and China, to deliver to our users the best conversational AI experience in the cabin and make the NIO cabin not just a place where you spend your time while driving from A to B, but like the quality time. So that's why the funny thing at NIO, we don't call product managers like everywhere else, but we call them, well, us, experience managers, which is kind of making the focus on our principles.
Well, I think that's actually quite a good idea. It's not a product. It's a means to an end. And the end would be the experience of the customer.
That is the point. So we put a lot of emphasis on the user experience, on the users itself. We have the so-called user closed loop system, where basically our users can talk to us directly about features they would like to have, about things they don't like that much, about suggestions they have. They have like clear communications channel with us. It's done on, for example, through our new app. But of course, the coolest way is to use our NOMI voice assistant. So you can just say to the voice assistant in the car, hey, NOMI, I want to give feedback. And then you just say whatever you have. And this thing goes first to our user-facing colleagues, who then, if it's kind of like product suggestion, for example, they would come to us directly, to the European product team. So it's a very direct connection for them. And it's a win-win because it's also good for us to have direct validation of our features very fast. We have like different beta phases of the different types. And this way we can have like a very direct system, like an infinity figure, right, where it goes into continuous feature development.
Continuous improvement.
Yes.
You said something before, and you said the European voice assistant. So that means, does that mean that there are different voice assistants on different continents?
Let's say same but different, right? That's how we call it. So there is one NOMI and there is one NIO, but there are the different software releases for China and for Europe for the many reasons, right? It's just more comfortable this way. So they are connected, they are similar, but they are definitely not the same. So in Europe, we have our European releases, China team has their releases, but we work very closely. So NIO, we are not just a Chinese brand, we are not a European brand, we are a global brand with a headquarters in China. And that has
I have to admit, I didn't know about, I didn't realize there was a NIO car brand, although it is in Holland. I have to look into that. So my apologies for that.
No worries, I'm happy to introduce.
Thank you. But the question I have, and I have to ask it, where, if you talk to the NOMI, sorry, is if you're in Europe with your car, is then all the data stored in Europe, I presume?
Yes.
So
Exactly.
you're within the boundaries of the European legislation.
That's one of the reasons why we have separate software releases. That like the data privacy is the one issue, but of course there are more. That the experiences are just sometimes different. That the users are different. We have lots of funny stories where we started working together, tried to push something, but then we saw that people perceived it differently. We did UX research and we came out with lots of very interesting insights. And the main learning for us was actually that same but different, right? You have to consider the user habits. And outside of data, there are lots of other interesting issues.
Now, at the convention, you're going to talk about LLM integration for enriching end-to-end user experience.
Yes.
And basically, you just said something, I think, a hugely important point, that there are cultural differences or other differences that determine the user experience. And what you see very often, people think, or companies think, one size fits all. And that's what we put our money in. And I'm really happy to hear that, besides the legislation part, because that's another thing, you understand and value the differences, cultural differences and other differences, and differentiate your product or your voice assistant based on that. But that also makes it harder, I presume.
It
because the
does.
costs are higher to do all these different versions of the
It
same
does.
but
And
different.
I think one of the approaches that helped us here is this shifting left, right? Where before you develop, you already like you eliminate the problem before it occurs, right? But for understanding this, it's not something that you understand because it's written on the paper. It's something that you learning by doing a lot, trying a lot, being agile, adapting, having a plan A, B, C all the time. That is something that we learned. Like to give you an example, that's kind of a very canonical one, right? Of course, we knew that the users had different attitudes towards the car talking in Europe and in China. But the thing is, we didn't have like real user feedback until we tried it out. So we kind of carried over some of the experiences, and our car gave lots of output. NOMI, the voice assistant, would, for example, speak a lot proactively because it was like it is connected right to the driver assistant. I don't know. An example would be like NOMI would tell you to stay focused if it was detected that you kept your eyes for too long off the road. Right. That's kind of very
Big
simple
brother.
thing. So to say, I mean, it's not technical simple, but it's kind of straightforward. But then people in China are used to the car just telling them this, with a voice, with beeps, whatever. And we found out that in Europe, people would come to us through their channels, as I mentioned before, and say, yeah, Nomi talks too much. I don't want to be told what to do. I want to control it. So these 2 points, right? A, too much feedback for Europeans in comparison to Chinese users, for example. And the other point, wishing to control the system instead of being surprised. Because, of course, if you are surprised, it's positive, but you give up control. So you give up control for the surprising effect, for some kind of comfort. And in this case, we saw that control was important. So people wanted to have a toggle for this, a toggle for that. And so we did UX research. Our amazing colleagues from the UX UI department helped us there. That was super interesting. It was super fast. And then, like after a couple of iterations, we figured out our good solution. And then we have those FOTAs and SOTAs, right? Firmware over the air updates and software over the air updates. So this was a FOTA update back, I think, 1.5 years ago. We pushed the feature. We had much better user feedback since then. And for us, that was a learning. Do UX research early enough, shift left, instead of just doing it somehow too late. And that was a very valuable, exemplary learning for us.
And probably also an expensive lesson because the delay costs money.
I mean, in this case, I think we were pretty fast to take action. But of course, it took us some time. But I would say it was rather, I see it as or we all see it actually as a very positive example, right? Because of course you fail in some things, right? You cannot deliver immediately a perfect product. I think it never happened to anyone. So I think we had a very good approach of delivering something and then being able to change it in an agile way, just this continuous improvement system, right? So
Yeah.
we get this feedback fast and we can react to this feedback fast enough and we can push the feedbacks. That's the thing, right? The cars of today are different than the cars of once, right? It's not that you buy a car and that's like this until it breaks in whatever, 10 years. I don't know. Here you buy the car and you don't know what is expecting you in 3 months because it pushes another update. You get the update, right? You pick it and kind of download it, install it, and here you go, another surprise.
Could you explain to me, because I'm kind of curious now, what NOMI, what you can make NOMI do, or how far can you push it right now?
How far? Well, I mean, you can actually go and try and push hard. That's for sure something interesting to do. But I can give you kind of the framework, right,
Yeah.
in how to orientate yourself. So we have the so-called native domains, we call them, or functional domains, which are the very typical of the voice assistant in the car. Because why do we have the voice assistants in the car? First of all, it was driver safety. We wanted to reduce the cognitive load. We didn't want people's eyes to be constantly like somewhere else than on the road, right? And that's why the whole thing started. And of course, it was starting from the basic functions like car control, I don't know, turn on air conditioning, turn off air conditioning, all these functions. The other thing was navigation, drive me to Berlin, find me a cafe. The third direction was media, operating of, for example, like in our case, it's like Spotify or Tidal, something next song, previous
Or
song.
or
And
find
the fourth
radio
direction was
station
phone.
X.
I'm sorry?
or find a specific radio station? Can it do that?
That is part of the media, exactly. Find a specific
Okay.
radio station, exactly. That's one part of the media applications on the car. Of course, that all depends on which applications you have on the car. So this is about the integration, right? The voice assistant is basically another interface. You have the graphical user interface, you have the physical interface for certain cases like buttons, stuff like this. You have the HUD, and then the last but not least, of course, the phone domain, like making phone calls from the car. Also, weather, you could kind of consider it a separate domain. Those are potentially you can use the voice assistant as the voice user interface for many different functions. But for us, the focus has been connecting to our ecosystem of the apps, and then earlier in the beginning of this year we also started a like completely new project. I mean, we started it before, but we released it at the beginning of 2024, which was the large language models, GPT, right? Through the Microsoft Azure OpenAI, we basically made it possible for the users to operate the car manual via NOMI. So instead of just searching for the information there, like through all the pages, you can just like ask questions about it. That's the one direction. The other direction, you can ask Nomi questions about herself, like FAQ, basically, like to get to know more the personality. And we can also do some chit chat topics, so you can have like a friendly chat with Nomi, ask her some questions. And we are constantly expanding the portfolio here. We also have the greeting feature where you can of course select it, yes or no, and then Nomi would greet you every day with the weather information, with the time information. So kind of connecting a little bit between you, the world, and the car, and then of course creating your experience.
If you look at I'm trying to process all this. So this is just the beginning. If I
Of
envision,
course, it's all very much developing. It's not something that you do and then it stays the same. It opens the door for a new blend of functions and architectures. Yes.
yeah, but the one thing I was wondering, if you have the manual on there and you have Nomi performing stuff, doing basically the functions in the car, why would I ask it to look in the manual if I can just ask how do I operate the windshield wiper?
I
I'm just
mean,
saying.
if you ask this, it is actually the functionality of the car manual. I mean, here we are going into a very specific question is about asking questions and doing the actions. Here we are entering a problem that is actual for actually very many chatbots and even more voice bots, and specifically in-car voice assistants, which is called the arbitration problem, right? Because sometimes there are different domains and different, we call it intents, that kind of compete for your attention, right? Because what you might want, do you want an action? Do you want information? And this is actually a big topic about to understand what the user might mean implicitly. Of course, all the users are different, trying to be objective and do the things that he wants. Because normally, if you want information, we would guide you through to the user manual. If you want action, we would give the action to you. Blending both is also an ongoing project we are investigating, but it is not that easy to do exactly because of those issues that where the different domains all have certain confidences in recognizing what you might want, but no one knows exactly what you want. Sometimes you don't even know what you want. That's
Yeah,
the psychology of the user.
I was trying to figure, okay, what if I wanted to turn on the cruise control and it doesn't understand me and pulls the handbrake or something? Um,
Well, mistakes
you can
happen.
imagine that security wise, that poses a risk.
Well,
And then,
just to understand all the features that are connected to assisted driving systems, right? The ADAS systems, exactly. Like voice enablement here is a big issue. That's why we try to do it with a safety first approach. That's the thing. So we don't do things that are not safe. That's
oh,
just one
okay.
one direction, right? So that's why it's safer, of course, to go with a graphical user interface here, and for the voice and the other arbitration kind of problems or issues, it's always about the confidence, right? How it works with the voice assistants. It's actually with the classic architecture. I mean, like outside of the newer LLM pure systems, which are anyway mostly integrated in the classic architecture, work with intents, right? Intent being basically what the user wants the system to do, and the intents in the car belong to the certain domains, which means that we understand what you want to do, and in this domain we normally do this. There is this type of behavior, this type of APIs we're working in, and yeah, this type of a pattern. So it's about the confidence, right? The system is based on machine learning, right? And the machine learning is the system that takes decision. So the system takes the decision based on the different information that we used before, different data that we use for training the models. What is the best behavior in this case? Is it to do the action? Is it not to do anything? If confidence is not high enough, we would better say, could you please repeat it? Right? And that's basically the rules that we as humans set, and the AI helps us, with the inferencing it for the other situations, which we cannot, of course, program one by one. That's why we use machine learning. That's how it
And
is.
if you talk about machine learning, is that machine learning driver specific, or is it general over all the NIO cars?
I mean, machine learning is part of conversational AI in the car, of course, because like, how
Uh-huh.
else would you do it? I think people, when people talk about AI in the car, and it has been talked a lot about recently, right? It's always this kind of confusion, the different understandings. So here, I would say we separate the ADAS systems that use their models, and they are quite separated from the conversational AI. Then there is NOMI, or the voice assistant, which uses this specific other machine learning things. And then there are other systems, right? Every car nowadays has some machine learning systems, like driving monitoring systems or whatever,
And
predictive maintenance or something. So in our case, I'm talking about conversational AI. And in conversational AI, we have the different modules, most of which are mostly supported with machine learning, which are the wake-up word detection, the automatic speech recognition, natural language understanding, of course, text-to-speech. It's also based on AI, and last but not least, the LLMs, large language models that are integrated in certain parts. It can be integrated into the natural language understanding, and it can be integrated into the core, the dialect management, where the actions are done and where the conversation is driven towards chit chat systems.
now, is there a NOMI app on your, or the NIO app on your phone, where you can control NOMI through your phone?
Well,
Does
that's
it
a very
exist?
good question.
Because I have a follow up. I'm going somewhere with this.
Sure, sure, sure. So a new app is actually a very big thing. One of the slides that I sometimes show at conferences is that NEO means the whole ecosystem, the whole connection. So it's not only the car, like it's the car and some embedded functionality. There is the cloud and there is the NEO app, right? And NEO, in NEO app, you can do lots of stuff. It's not the app about controlling NOMI. It's kind of not the main use case. Neo app is mostly for users, potential users, or just interested people. You don't even have to be a Neo user. You can just download Neo app after we talk and just explore what
I
is there
will.
for the community. So I would say the key word here is community, right? So NOMI is part of the product, so to say, right? It's like we have the product, the Neo car, Neo, NOMI as part of the product, sub-product, facilitator. There are many ways of saying it, right? And then NOMI and the Neo app are kind of connected in some ways, but mostly they are connected via the car. So the car, so to say, is the connecting points between the two. In the future, there might be like other connections, more connections, but for now, it's basically you use the Neo app for connecting to the Neo community, connecting to the Neo team, and if you have a car, connecting to the Neo car. And then NOMI is connected to the car for like car control navigation, but not only, it's also connected to the outside world because you can also ask NOMI questions that are not even related to the car. So it's kind of overlapping like those circles that you have, right?
So let's take this one notch further.
Sure.
Now, a lot of people have a lot of smart stuff in their houses, right? One of them being the thermostat. Do you envision where, instead of going through your phone, using NOMI, connecting it to your smart home functionalities that say, okay, NOMI, heat up my living room or my kitchen, where it knows, okay, I need to go to the thermostat in the house and put it at standard, I don't know, 21 degrees, whatever, um,
Mhm.
and warm up the house.
I mean, of course,
I envision, because what we see happening is okay, we start having so many apps, so many devices, and I personally also, it's driving me nuts because for every new thing I need to go to another app and to control this, to control that, and basically at some point you need an app to control everything, and hopefully it doesn't break. But if you have that, it makes your life so much easier.
Of course, one of the keywords in this whole IoT, right, Internet of Things
Yeah,
topic, is orchestration. And I've heard this idea a couple of times about NOMI orchestrating it. Uh, Potentially, there are things that can be done, but let's see it in the from the perspective of the product vision, right? Our vision is that NOMI is part of the car, right? That helps you do stuff in the car, also connect to the outside world. Connecting to the home is just one possible way of imagining it. It is not possible, so NOMI is not connected to your
yeah.
smart assistants at home. But this is exactly one of those ideas which we are always very happy about, right, at NIO. So it's basically the question of how far do you want the integration to be, right? About integrating the car and the phone, and NOMI being part of the car and integrating with the phone, integrating the phone with the assistant at home, and having an app for the assistant at home, and then connecting that app to the car. So there are many different ways technically to do it, but the use case, I would say it's a valid use case given how many devices we have to deal with today. So yeah, let's see how we are going to do it in the future. It's
Well,
possible a
I
possible use case.
just commercially, I can envision that, and nobody has done that yet. I mean, they tried with Alexa, it didn't work. Um, it worked a little bit, but not. It's not the core of your of whatever you're doing. And I can envision a situation where at some point there is one or two apps that basically allow you that you use every day that allow you to be at the center of whatever you're doing electronically and in a safe way. And if you can do it from your car, you can control it in a safe way. It would add to driving safety, especially let's say your alarm goes off in your house, right? And then the system recognizes, oh, your alarm is going off and it's at the second floor. I don't know. It recognizes that, gets that information. It tells you instead of a lot of noise in your car. And do you want to call the police or you want to call someone to go to the house? Yes. Who? Okay. You understand then?
Oh yeah,
You
I
can
know.
control a situation basically interfacing with conversational AI, interpreting what's happening on your phone or the signals that come in and telling you what to do. And, maybe some things you can say, I don't want anything. And other ones come through. I
That's a
can,
potential use case. I mean, that's I would say that's an industry trend in general. Sometimes it's stronger, sometimes it's weaker during the different periods, but depending on how technology goes. But that's one use case of integrating the smart home devices with the car. There are pros and cons, I would say here, but let's see how the industry, also the whole industry goes. Who goes in this direction, who doesn't. Yeah, it just has to be said that the individuals today are quite overwhelmed with a lot of information. Then orchestration is definitely something that would be helpful.
it's interesting that we need technology to manage our technology.
Well, yeah, if it becomes unmanageable because it's too much data, right, and too much decision making. Yeah, it can be AI or it can be actually pretty simple algorithms that you can set up,
Uh,
right, to
and this is
in
the
the levels.
core of your talk, right? Problem first approach.
That's the thing. It's actually a super curious topic that we've discussed recently, also in a lot of different rounds, right? Um, I found that actually it's just one brick, right? Like we've always been taught, right, on the product side that you have to look at the problem first. Still super valid, still the main thing. But we noticed that also market expectations that go in those, waves there, they also have quite an impact on the whole thing. For example, I mean, everyone of us in the business, I think, has noticed that starting from like November 22, when ChatGPT was publicly released, it was like the app that changed the approach of the people towards how large language models can be used, right? They were existing before. It's not that they were not
I
there,
know it's
but
nothing new.
exactly, but not on such a large scale with so many users was it used. And then it very fastly changed the approach of people towards also specifically voice assistants in the car. I noticed in the beginning, before that, it was kind of, yeah, it has to be reliable, the performance has to be good. And anyway, people thought, I mean, how good can that be, right? It can reliably open the windows. Well, next year it can open the windows even more reliably. Next year it maybe can turn on the lighting, do the navigation. Like there are lots of challenges still, like multilingual recognition. If you say something in German, but the place you want to go to is pronounced in English because you're in the UK. Like there are things, there were still challenges, but then all of a sudden people started expecting that those models, they can do anything. They can generate any content, then they can be connected with any API, produce the actions, and I really see how those expectations like dramatically grew, exponentially grew. And you have to consider this in the product management, right? You can just ignore those market expectations because, of course, they have to be factored into your feature decisions. And that made the thing more interesting, kind of more unpredictable. So it's still the problem first approach, lots of UX research, user research approach, and the factor of market expectations. Many more factors too, but these ones are like the most prominent ones, I would say.
Now, I know NIO is not one of the biggest car brands in Europe. Not yet, at
Not
least.
yet.
Yeah, yeah, I knew you were going to say that, so
Yeah.
I was way ahead of you. But you have like any other brand, you have a potential chance or opportunity that if you come at the heart of the whatever happens in the life of the consumer, um, that is a positive attitude towards the car. That helps, right?
Of
If
course.
Neo with NOMI makes your life easier, hey, that's interesting.
Mhm.
And at some point, a car is a car. It takes you from A to B. It's more comfortable or less comfortable. It's cheaper and more expensive, but that's it. Maybe reliability is also a thing. But what advice would you give to other companies that are not there yet, where you guys are, but are thinking of, okay, we need to. Of course, it's a means to an end, but we have a use case, and how do we get to the heart of the consumer, and how do we touch that? And I understand UX is a huge thing. So what advice would you give to a company starting with that and say, okay, where do we begin, and how do we approach this?
I would say we are all in the same boat. We all face similar challenges. So it's not that like we achieved everything and the others not. I would rather say I was very fascinated by learning from many of my colleagues, both European and Chinese colleagues. One thing was that I really learned here by doing is listening to the customers, to the users. And it's not that straightforward. Sometimes you think like, yeah, you'll ask them and they will tell you what you think. No, they won't, because we all, as consumers, we don't really know what we think, right? We have to be posed the right questions. It's a little bit like, I don't know, like a psychologist. A good psychologist will not tell you what to do and will not ask you like direct questions because it's not that easy, right? It's something where you really have to listen. You give some guidance on how you want the answer to be. You put some like A/B testings and other approaches, but then it's not necessarily working perfectly all the time. That's the one direction. So listening and asking, so to say, kind of implicit questions, investing in UX research, not saving money on this. Of course, we like there are always constraints, but it is a very important point because nowadays there is so much technology to choose from in the world, right? But we don't need all the technology in the world. We need the technology that is right for us. And here I'm not only talking about customization, it's of course also a big theme, so to say, personalization and customization, but also we want what we really need. And we sometimes explicitly don't know what we need. So the company has success who figures out what the users need, I think. That's a long journey. It's like we are not at the final destination yet, but we are excited to go on with that.
Yeah, it's like nobody knows they need an orchestration app to control the technology,
Until you
but we
develop the whole
know it's
technology.
coming, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
It's too much. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Olga. This is very insightful, and I learned a lot.
Thank you.
And of course, I'll visit Neo and download the app,
Please do.
and I'll let you know.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
very much. See you in
Take
Edinburgh.
care. Bye bye.